Welcome to Transforming Work with Sophie Wade, exploring the future of work. Find out what's going on, disruptions, evolutions, opportunities, challenges, and interventions in our multi-generational distributed organizations. With a new tech and talent focus, discover what you need to know to stay upskilled and relevant and ensure your business keeps its competitive edge. Sophie investigates the promise and reality of the future of work now and as we look ahead. She interviews people who are changing work experiences and practices and shares how we can each transition smoothly and successfully to effective and more productive new ways of working.
Hi. This podcast episode is my 100th, after almost 4 years. I'm celebrating this milestone focusing on the updated employee experience that keeps evolving along with all the other workplace changes. It seems an obvious topic since the transformation of work is tech-driven and talent-focused. The new year is also a natural milestone for making updates or changes. It's a moment to step forward with new purpose and decisions. What needs to be done and how, similarly and differently, to achieve objectives for the year ahead. Assessing strategic and tactical plans for 2024. How will you engage and motivate employees to achieve the business goals? What has been effective over the past 12 to 18 months as core post-pandemic next norms have been established? What levers will resonate with your team members, spanning cultural themes, work arrangements, upskilling plans, and employee benefits, so that you can foster workers' creativity, innovative developments, and employee satisfaction, and your business can generate, grow, or maintain a competitive edge? Perhaps counterproductive workplace tension distracted some attention and undermined engagement last year. This year, how can you develop or sustain a healthy employer-employee relationship, encouraging open dialogue, empathetic listening and action in response, and a cultural environment that is mutually supportive of the business and employees' growth and success? Exploring these ideas and actions, I'm delighted to be speaking with Cecelia Girr, Strategy Director at TBWA Worldwide and Director of Cultural Strategy at TBWABackslash, a cultural intelligence unit translating cultural blur into business opportunity. Hi, Cecilia. How are you?
So nice to see you, Sophie.
Great to see you again. I am excited to be discussing all kinds of things about the employee experience. First, I start at the beginning, and you studied political science and government. What prompted that?
I did. Trying to think what prompted that. I guess as far as I can remember, I've always loved stories. My whole life, I've been a voracious reader and I've been obsessed with movies. And when I was little, I loved interviewing people and listening to their stories. And I loved writing pieces of my own. So, when I was in high school, I actually thought I wanted to go into documentary filmmaking.
Oh.
So honestly, anything for a good story. So for me, in many ways, studying political science was such an easy and natural choice because it's basically learning the stories of the world and, learning a compilation of the greatest and most epic story of them all.
That is a natural segue, thank you, to the fact that you then moved into focusing on cultural intelligence. How did you find out that that was a job?
To be completely honest with you, one day I woke up and I was here. I guess you could say it was part luck and part hard work and part building the job that you want. But I'm so lucky and I've really been able to combine all the things I love the very most in this job. But if you're interested in terms of how one thing informed the other, I don't want to be too reductive, but political science is the study of power and how power shapes the world and its history and prominent philosophies and ideologies and culture. And while a career in cultural intelligence and future forecasting and strategy might not be considered political science per se, studying political science has been indispensable to what I do. It's particularly through the comparative lens. Poli-sci teaches you this constant practice of looking for tensions within constructed binaries and perceived binaries. So rather than designating something good or evil or right or wrong or positive or negative, it's a study and a science that really forces you to pay attention to nuance and gray area and ambiguity, which is essential to the Backslash way of understanding and analyzing culture. So I think it's been a natural fit for me.
As you were digging in deep to cultural intelligence with that lens of it's not one or the other, it's a whole panoply of different elements, stories. What was your first focus when you were starting in the realm of cultural intelligence? I don't know about listeners, but I don't particularly know what cultural intelligence means. Sounds really cool. And I think that's what I've been doing throughout my life. But I'd like to understand, when that's your job, what are you doing?
Certainly. So it's a fun blend of research and strategy. So I'm sure you know what strategy is, but I like to think of us as a player within the larger global shift towards something that's called solutions journalism. So solutions journalism focuses on what the news misses and how people are trying to actually solve problems and what we can learn from their successes and their failures. So at Backslash, what we do is sort of this unique hybrid of strategy and research and journalism where we focus on building blueprints for what the future can or should look like based on things that are happening today and how people are reacting to them.
Oh, fascinating. And you therefore have to take a very broad and neutral approach at the higher level, as well as looking in great detail to try and understand from the top down, but also building from the bottom up where new ideas are flourishing and to focus on what those potential points where new growth is sparking and whether that might be a trajectory or it's just a moment in time.
Absolutely. We get intelligence in from our correspondents from across the globe, and we take that intelligence and dissect it and analyze it and see what's happening. We like to look towards the unintended consequences of things that are happening and then also look towards the positives. So there's a lot of analysis that goes into it. Honestly, it's just the most fun kind of work.
Getting to culture, people generally have a reasonable sense of what culture means when it's to do with a country or potentially a city or a town, but not so much in the workplace. And corporate cultures haven't been focused on to a great extent in the past, or let's say prior to the pandemic. Why do you think workplace cultures, from your early experience, analyzing, understanding, and going into the details and research about both domestic and international cultures and corporate cultures, why do you think there has been a different emphasis and certainly understanding and value given to culture in the workplace?
I think that culture in the workplace actually was emphasized, just not with a discerning eye towards the health of employees or any real way that had the individual at heart. In many cases, as you mentioned, especially in Silicon Valley and with startups and with bigger brand employers, culture was prominent and it was emphasized and it was perpetuated by company leaders. But the idea around work culture was wrong. Culture was more of a misnomer for cult or the cult of work mentality.
Okay.
Yeah, and in this idea that based on that work isn't just a means to an end, but actually the end itself. And so prior to the pandemic, from what we were paying attention to, particularly in America, there was a real and very purposeful attention put towards the work revolution, where the workplace was made sexy and offices transformed into campuses and even small cities. And you had all the amenities you could ever dream of. And cubicles became bullpens and beer on tap, regular, all of these things, and coworkers becoming pseudo family members. And of course, this wasn't 100% pervasive at every company, but it was a real shift happening across the globe. And there were a number of companies, I probably don't even need to say the names of, that were the pinnacle of this cool company aesthetic that defined the aspirational workplace. And that was one that required something we like to think of as an all-in attitude. So think of WeWork, for instance, the company that really symbolized cool work culture of this time, told applicants to not just make a living, but make a life.
Right.
But among, as you mentioned, the many lessons that we learned in the pandemic amid mass layoffs and everything, there was this real collective realization that with our, some would say, toxic relationship with work. I hate to give things the toxic label, but, it was a collective realization
Less
that
than
we give,
positive.
right, a collective realization that we give so much love and sometimes loyalty and dedication to our work. And a lot of the time it doesn't love us back the same way. But the cultures that were being propped up by company leaders were ones that prioritized the company and the business over individual people. And actually, we're starting to see a flip of that script. So now when we hear the word culture being used by company leaders, I feel it's more so about showing new intention and an intention to rewrite wrongs and start anew in areas where it's necessary, and going under the surface and making sure there's a real healthy relationship there between employers and employees. So it's about assessing our relationship to management, fighting for fair pay, all of those things.
Many companies are saying we need people to return to the office X number of days a week. It's now settled down to 3 because our culture is an in-office culture. If an employer had a culture, it wasn't an in-office culture, it was just their culture. And now they're saying that was an in-office culture. What have they realized or not realized that is fundamental to the culture that they're attributing to their culture that is connected to location? I am trying to separate the two because I think it's really important for people to understand culture better, because it is so very much needed these days. It is needed all the more when people are working in distributed ways, as they have been for years with multiple office locations and all that kind of stuff to connect us all. And it is used as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go back to the office. So I'm trying to find out from you what your thoughts are about these nuances and distinctions between culture and place.
I think everybody's grappling with this, to be honest, and it's such a big question, and I think you can have culture in both places, both in the office and at home. We don't focus so much on culture in terms of place, but more of this adoption of flexibility as a whole as the new culture. In order to actually improve the employee experience. So not just, reconsidering where we work and how we communicate with people within our company, but, looking deeper at the things that are driving our relationship to work. So the way we set our schedules, or how our benefits are structured, how we get paid, all of those things. Those are the things that are interesting to me personally.
Now we are beyond the pandemic. Culture remains elevated. A lot of companies aren't focusing out in the same way, or otherwise using it as an excuse to revert to how things were. But there is a shift, as we have discussed, towards the employee experience. And you've come up with a really, really interesting report about the future of employee experience going forward. In your research and analysis, what have you found have been the core issues with the employee experience that have been guiding what the recommendations are? What were some of the key areas to focus on?
Certainly. There's honestly so many issues with work right now. It was really hard to whittle down on, which ones are most prominent, but we looked at it through the lens of 4 big tensions that were coming to the fore. So one, this idea that the path from education to employment is no longer straightforward. And as, innovation accelerates, employers are being increasingly called on to prepare people for the jobs of tomorrow. So that instability and an uncertainty was a real big one. A second thing of, as we just talked about, there was real heyday of wooing people and talent with flashy perks and well-crafted mission statements. But now people are taking off those rose-colored glasses and getting real about work's role in their life. And with that, we're going to see a lot more focus on the necessities. So things that really matter to your day-to-day practice of work. We focus on things like flexibility and inserting that for a better employee experience. And then also things like how, turbulence and uncertain futures, from climate change to AI to aging populations, are going to disrupt work as we know it. There's certainly a lot of things that are bringing up this renewed focus on employee experience.
For you and your friends, not necessarily in your professional realm, what are the key ones that are focused on? Is it the desire for flexibility? Is it a huge focus on climate change? Is it, what job am I going to do? AI is changing so much. What in your friend group outside of work is top of mind? And other groups like with Gen Zs, where there is some angst as well as excitement about what the future can hold.
For me, flexibility is really number one, and I'm lucky that is the thing that is number one for me. I understand that that's a privilege in terms of the work that I do, but pandemic, it was really lovely working from home, getting that. I write for a lot of my daily work. We research, we write, having that solitude. And also, as you know, with writing and researching, it's not necessarily 9 to 5 work. So having a schedule that adapts to the kind of work that I do, has been a really important thing that I look for now. An important thing that I've tried to implement on my team, that we really champion schedules the same way. I think scheduling is really important. And again, I think things like benefits, something that I pay closely attention to, the ability to both understand, get help around benefits, help understanding, and then being able to customize according to my needs at whatever specific milestone I'm at in my life, whether that means that I'm putting more focus on caregiving, family building, so on and so forth.
Sure.
For the people that I'm surrounded by, flexibility is definitely front of mind for people. I look to people like either my parents or, my younger siblings. And I really do think about the need for always on upskilling as well. I think the younger generation coming out of college, they came into a work environment that, the rate of change of what skills are demanded and desired are so quickly changing. So, university doesn't exactly set you up for the workplace of today like it used to at all. So I feel that wholeheartedly. And then, from the lens of my parents, people who have spent their whole career doing this one thing start to be outpaced by automation and AI. There's, a real tug on my heart for my parents and their friends on, a workplace that is actually championing their upskilling and their ability to continue to work until they actually have the money to retire.
How are you seeing different groups, areas, sectors adapting to that? It's not just AI, of course. It is to do with climate. It is to do with the general evolution of technology and how careers are changing, how retirement is moving further out because we're living longer. What are some of the more detailed elements in terms of how employers can be supporting employees trying to manage this turbulence in their daily, weekly, and monthly work lives?
Yeah, things aren't great. I think a lot of people right now have a bit of a grim outlook on what's next for work and jobs of the future. And, as we talk about, the most resilient organizations are going to be those that are actually proactively making efforts towards protecting their workforce in the face of all this insane turbulence that's going on. One of the areas that's most interesting to me is particularly the rise of heat protections for outdoor workers. And as we know, outdoor workers are bearing the brunt of all these soaring temperatures and extreme heat, and sometimes at the cost of their lives. So, there's this stat that says, the lowest 20% of workers suffer 5 times as many heat-related injuries as the highest paid 20% of workers. So, think delivery drivers, coal miners, construction workers, agriculture workers, landscapers, etc. Heat's impact is not evenly distributed. Yeah.
Sure.
And so there's a number of heat protections that are popping up right now on behalf of both governments, employers, innovators in terms of products that are coming into play right now to actually protect these people who are on the front lines of climate change. So that's one area that is is really, really interesting to me. And when we talk about turbulence, a lot of it feels very abstract and a little bit, in the future, because these things are happening and they're evolving, but heat is really happening right now. And it's impacting so many people. Scientists are warning this could be the coolest summer we'll ever experience for the rest of our lives. And, heat days are becoming the new snow days. There's, all these record breaking temperatures happening. So with that, heat protections are going to become the new essential. And that's something that I'm particularly interested in.
I really look at how careers have changed with all this evolution, including whether it's people who are on the front line and needing heat protection, saying, I want to change what I'm doing because of these things that are evolving. And there's more skills transferability, and I can think about doing something different because there is much more ability to be applying one's skills in different ways, and that need to be continually upskilling. I did see some articles during the pandemic about how certain people who, let's just say, had been in hospitality took the time to, for example, be learning how to code and learning some different skills that were putting them on a different trajectory, taking that period to be able to go along a different path. As careers change, this ability to be exploring more early on to find out what it is that you want to do, what you are good at, also as new jobs keep popping up. What were some of the things that were interesting and surprising to you as you went through the discovery and research about these new career paths and how things are evolving and how employers are needing to adapt for it?
Huge question. There's this quote from the CEO of Indeed that said, with AI, it's conceivable that the students now may find themselves learning skills in college that are obsolete by the time they graduate, as we just mentioned. So the landscape is changing so quickly. One of the most interesting things that I find that's happening right now is employees becoming educators, as things like universities lose their allure potentially, as people realize that universities, colleges aren't necessarily preparing them for the jobs of tomorrow. A really interesting evolution that's happening is more and more employers putting investment into becoming educators and engaging in always on upskilling for their employees. So, I think that that's something that has been long awaited. And potentially, years ago there was some investment here, but as people change jobs more frequently, what will be interesting to watch is how employers that are actually investing in this always on upskilling take the fact that people might move on to other companies and their investment might be for just the future rather than the employers that are actually working in their own workforce.
Yes. I come across employers who say they're on loan to me, which I love because it's saying I'm going to invest in you, but you're going to go somewhere else, because then they can become an ambassador. And also for smaller companies, that they can get better employees if they acknowledge that this person is going to move on as they arrive. And then there doesn't have to be any hidden agenda. Okay, this is really interesting. I can get the benefit of more responsibility at the smaller company and then take the next step, wherever that may be. Gathering research and talking to particularly large employers, did you find that they are managing to navigate the evolving career dynamics? Because internal marketplaces are not easy. They are rolling out in fits and starts. It's very complicated. What were you finding from having those discussions? Because this is going to take a few years to sort out.
There are so few players that are doing this, and so few players that are doing this the right way. We're seeing the big companies that have the profit margins and the ability to really fund their employees' future doing things. But outside of that, it's really not an investment that a lot of employers are wanting to make, and also excited to make. I think it's going to be a larger shift where they're going to see that there's actually no choice, and that in order to actually recruit employees, it's not, doing always on upskilling is not just about retention. It's more about it will be the recruitment tactic of the future. And of course, hopefully retention happens as a result, but it's going to really be a key tactic for recruitment.
Yes, and for business competitiveness as well. When I started in workplace flexibility, that was in 2011. And then the future of work, it wasn't the whole picture, but it was a core piece of it, which wasn't just working from home. It was all the different ways that one can be working in flexible ways, on site or not. There is still tension about the type of model that companies have. 60-something% of companies in the US have a hybrid model. Most of those are fixed hybrid models, but they are allowing some flexibility of options for people to be working from home in a structured way. What do you see as being the likely immediate trajectory, the flexibility rolling out more over the course of 2024 and beyond? What have you seen in terms of how employers are reacting? What now?
So we're seeing companies just stumbling and finding their way here. And there's such a large spectrum of what companies are offering and what they're doing. You have companies who are reeling back their flexible policies of work from home and actually having their employees go back to the office. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have companies that are saying, no more office unless you want to. Go work in Jamaica, and here's a visa, a worker visa to go do that. So there's such a wide spectrum of what's happening here. And I don't necessarily think there is a right or wrong answer of what employers should be doing. I think in the future, in the short term, as companies stumble and find their way, I think people are going to look to the companies that really define the kind of workplace that they want and the kind of environment that they want. Not everybody wants to work in a silo at home or on virtual calls. There's certainly people on my team who really, really, really love being in the office. For my work specifically, that's writing and researching, that really does require that alone time and that exploration and new environments for stimulation, of course. But again, I think in the long term, what will happen is there will be, more overt policies that allow you to sort of choose your own adventure.
Right. There are more possibilities that companies, even in the US, are allowing employees to have a 30-day adventure because that's within most countries' visa permissions. So you can go and be working somewhere else, have a great experience. Allowing more life experiences like that are wonderful.
Oh, it's so exciting. And just to build on that, one of the most interesting things I find is that, especially as Gen Z grows up behind their phone and haven't really had those chances to enter into workplace where everybody is in the office and there is that intense environment of social interaction and collaboration. I think a lot of this flexibility in terms of workplace will come from companies actually offering places where you can go and live maybe abroad for a year at their company in this country and actually act as a concierge service to help you move around across the globe, stay within the company, but actually experience, as one would as an exchange student, different countries through the lens of their company.
Yes. What I found so powerful about that is it means that if my company is selling to Spain and I'm designing products or overseeing a sales force in Spain, if I don't actually have that cultural expertise or understanding, and I haven't for an extended period of time, I cannot be as insightful because I don't have the cultural nuances. If I spend a month there, I'm not living there, but it can really change the insights and understanding that one has. I think it's very powerful. What were the things that you found perhaps most surprising or most concerning in all of the work that you gather together in this employee experience report?
Most concerning. In terms of what's most concerning, I think automation is the boogeyman right now for a lot of people. For lack of a better word, I think AI is both really exciting and how we can harness it for, positives in our work. And then also there's real fear there around rendering people obsolete in the workforce. I think as Backslash, we always try and look at the positives. So, what is the potential opportunities for a more positive future? But again, I think, there's a lot of concerning elements around AI from, just privacy, ownership of your own work,
Sure.
etc. I have friends who are in singing and songwriting, and to just hear their fears right now, and the viability of their careers as they move forward, and ownership of their own music. And I know this is happening across creative industries right now. That's something that's both frightening and exciting.
Sure. Yeah. Perhaps instead of surprising, what's most exciting that you see in terms of the potential? I mean, I personally am very excited with all these daunting elements. I am very excited about what I would call the future of work, although it's already here, but modern work in terms of focusing on the individual, being able to work in different ways, be able to work flexibly, be able to find how we work best and find out more about ourselves and that greater self-awareness and yes, and about empathy. For you, what is exciting about where we are going, what we are learning?
Sophie, this might sound so lame, but I am so excited about benefits. Maybe it's the point of life that I'm in, but this topic just really gets me. I think this future where employers are actually providing you with products that actually help you live a better life will be such a massive shift. We're seeing so many cool new players come on the market, from menotech for menopause. We're seeing things around fertility, actual support for families and for women.
This is really interesting. I definitely did not expect you to be saying benefits, and I love it. I love this idea. And yes, these things about menopause and fertility are really key. They are elevated in all kinds of ways around this country at the moment. And so it's wonderful to hear you say that and highlighting how important it is for you as an employee. Very interesting indeed.
Certainly, especially as when you think about, for millennials, experiences are so important. I know we've heard that so much. I mean, benefits are experiences, and the idea that your company would provide you with benefits that actually allow you to engage in the wellness experiences that can come at a premium, I think is really, really exciting. And even things beyond family planning and feminine specific, female specific benefits. I think things like end of life planning, really, really fascinating. We talk about this global embrace of talking about death and our own mortality, and all of the new innovations that are coming up right now. Things like, even services like death doulas. And now where companies are actually thinking, okay, caregiving is for the people who are caregiving in their lives, or who do have family members who are at end of life. This is such a huge, huge, huge job that they are not paid for. So having your actual employer support you in that, whether it is by providing services like death doulas or end of life planning in terms of financial support, that is going to really, really change our relationship to work, and that work is an actual provider of wellness and helping us boost our well-being rather than taking our well-being from us.
Those are such interesting points. I really appreciate your sharing them. That's also meaningful to me because of how many women are caregivers of elderly parents, and often have to drop out of the workforce in order to do that. And so being able to have some support, particularly as we're trying to enable people to stay in the workforce so they're not using up their retirement funds, these are very powerful benefits, and I can understand why you focused on them. Cecilia, what haven't I asked you that I should have done?
The things that are really interesting to me are very nitty gritty. Like I'm really interested in how pay is shifting within, compensation structures. And in the report, we talk about adaptive pay. So, this more personalized approach to worker compensation. So, I get excited about a future where perhaps there's a menu. You become an employee at a company, and perhaps your first meeting with HR, there's a menu that allows you to look at, and customize your compensation according to your priorities. So in practice, this might look like, giving people the opportunity to choose how much cash they want versus the amount of equity they want. Or, if I'm looking to buy a house right now, I might want that amount of upfront cash.
Right.
So, but a younger employee who perhaps is not doing that or doesn't have any large upcoming expenses might opt for more equity in hopes for a larger payoff later on. So I think this is really interesting. And, we're already starting to see really cool new examples of employers thinking differently about pay. Have you heard about earned wage access?
No. I've heard about daily pay, which I'll come back to.
Earned wage access, maybe there's probably some crossover, but it's an increasingly popular model where employees are paid at the end of their shift, as you might say with daily rather than monthly or biweekly. So it's a real way to attain, more financial security and be able to pay bills on time. So even just simple shifts within, the way that we're paid, I think is part of this larger shift that we're seeing in culture where people are getting real about money and the role that it plays in their lives. And we're really looking to, as we are with work and trying to find a relationship that's more rooted in wellness, similarly with our finances, we're looking to really forge that wellness-oriented relationship as well. And I think as that happens and people look to do that in their own personal lives, it will be really on employers to actually give them the optionality to do that. So I think that's really, really powerful in terms of, again, recruitment and retention and getting people to stick around.
I was talking to the CHRO of a 220,000 person company, and I think the company's called Daily Pay, or that was their product. And it was about being able to be paid every day. And 35% of employees had signed up for it. It actually ended up being easier for the CFO to deal with than the biweekly or monthly schedule. So that was interesting to her. She hadn't expected that, nor the CFO expected that. But so many people were signing up for it and were very happy because they were able to manage their money better. If you're used to Venmo, Zelle, and Revolut, that's how you think about money. You don't see it in these much longer cycles. So adapting for the different timeframes and cycles that people have at different ages or in their experience is certainly helpful.
Just linking it back to what we were talking about with benefits, I think both with benefits and adaptive pay, it's about becoming more customized and tailored to the specific life and life stage of the employee. So where you're at in your career, where you're at in your finances, where you're at in what you actually need in terms of support, all of these things are just going to, actually make work help you live a better life.
So you don't live to work, you work to live. My last question, starting in 2024, what are 2 or 3 key things that a company should think about as a priority when they're trying to update, upgrade, improve their employees' experience?
I would say first and foremost, embrace transparency and direct communication with your employees. I think nothing is more powerful than listening to the people who work for you and what they need. I think it's so uncommon for companies to actually ask their employees, what do you need from me? What do you want from me? And then actually make long and enduring efforts towards answering on those desires. And I think doing that is a really, really powerful step towards being a better employer. I think secondarily, embracing flexibility in all the ways that you can, being understanding of people's lives, again, going back to listening to the employee. Companies for so long talked about becoming more human, but what about listening to the humans that are, doing the work for you?
Yeah.
So actually putting your money where your mouth is. And then the third one I would say is invest. So in terms of employee experience, it feels as though a lot of companies think that they can just slap a Band-Aid on this and they can say that there's initiatives that they're doing, but they're not actually putting the money behind it to really invest in those changes. So I think, putting your money where your mouth is and actually investing in the changes is what's going to make it actually meaningful.
Fantastic. Those are 3 great steps for listeners for 2024 to make a change in employees' experience. Cecilia, thank you so much for sharing your insights from culture to the employee experience. And of course, in the show notes, there will be the link to the Future of Employee Experience report from Backslash, which Cecilia has been referring to. So really, really appreciate you sharing your insights and thoughts.
Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you so much again to Cecelia Girr, Strategy Director at TBWA Worldwide and Director of Cultural Strategy at TBWABackslash. You can follow Cecilia on LinkedIn. The Future of Employee Experience report can be downloaded at backslash.com, backslash.com. And you can follow Backslash on Instagram at TBWABackslash. Immediate action tip. First, encourage transparency, listening to employees' needs and making long-lasting efforts to respond. Second, embrace flexibility, beginning by understanding employees' lives and them as human beings. Third, invest in the employee experience, financially. To understand how a human-centric system infused with empathy can improve employees' experiences and business outcomes in 2024, please check out my book, Empathy Works: The Key to Competitive Advantage in the New Era of Work. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and like it. You can also write a quick review wherever you listen. For regular video updates, curated, useful articles, commentary, research, and information, follow me on LinkedIn and sign up for my Work in Progress newsletter there. Thanks for listening. Until next time.